The fourth great pharaoh of Egypt was called Osiris. He was a god, the great-grandson of Ra, who, according to the Egyptians, created the world. Tall, dark-skinned, and remarkably handsome, he was one of the very best of the gods. He was even known as Osiris, which means the good one, for he never got drunk, he never chased women, and he was a sworn enemy of violence. Osiris took as his wife the goddess Isis, who also happened to be his sister. Now, you might think this was not a particularly good thing to do, but in those days, about 4,000 years before Christ, nobody would have batted an eyelid. In fact, all the human pharaohs made a point of marrying their sisters too, just to show how much they approved of the idea. Isis was a very beautiful goddess with slender arms, an elegant body, and wonderful green eyes. She would have been easily recognizable because she liked to wear a tall helmet with a gold disc set between two horns. Osiris, of course, wore a crown and carried a scepter and whip, which were the symbols of his high office. For many years, Osiris and Isis reigned over Egypt, doing good wherever they went. The first thing they did was to stamp out cannibalism, for at that time the people were no more than savages who didn't even know how to cultivate the land. Osiris showed them how. He also taught the men how to make bread and wine. He built the first temples and designed the first statues. He even invented 2 different sorts of flute. Meanwhile, Isis was just as busy. She showed the women of Egypt how to grind corn and how to weave cloth, and instructed the men in the art of medicine. She bore Osiris a son, Horus, who had the head of a falcon and was later worshipped as a sun god. It was Isis who introduced the whole idea of marriage to the people. Before that, everyone had just lived together as they pleased. Isis and Osiris couldn't have been more popular. Nobody could have ruled Egypt more wisely. But still, Osiris wasn't content. "You know," he muttered one day, "I really think it's time I left Egypt." "Left Egypt?" his wife cried. Why? Well, we've done a lot of good work here. But what about the rest of the world? I mean, look at Asia. Just for starters, the people of Asia are still living in caves. They have the most disgusting personal habits. They never wash. They grunt at each other. I think it's time I went and did some good work over in Asia. You're very good, Isis said. But who will look after Egypt while you're away? You will. You'll do just as good a job as me, he said. If you say so, she replied. He turned. Good. Then it's settled. Osiris left for Asia the very next day. He took no soldiers with him and no weapons. Instead, he trusted to music and kind words to win the natives over. Meanwhile, Isis ruled Egypt, keeping everything in perfect order. But Osiris had a younger brother called Set, who was his complete opposite in every way. For a start, Set was repulsively ugly, with chalk white skin, violent red hair, and a pointed nose. He had pimples, and he spoke in a whiny voice. Set was jealous of his older brother. He hated Osiris and wanted to be king of Egypt himself. The trouble with Osiris is that he's so good, he remarked one day to the Queen of Ethiopia, who happened to be a friend of his. What's wrong with that? The Queen asked. Well, it's so boring for a start. And take this business of cannibalism. Osiris might not like it, but why should that mean we all have to stop it? Personally, I always adored a young boy lightly poached with rice. Now, I'm not even allowed a nibble. And what's the harm in eating people? That's what I want to know. I wouldn't like to be eaten, the Queen said. That's not the point. I think things were much better the way they used to be. We used to have so much fun. Set would have liked to have taken advantage of his brother's absence to take over the kingdom. But Isis was so watchful that it was quite impossible. Instead, he got together with 72 accomplices and devised a horrible plot. He pretended he admired Osiris. Whenever his brother's name was mentioned, he would simply smile sweetly and praise him endlessly. And when Osiris got back from Asia, he invited him to a celebratory banquet. Because of Set's performance, Osiris suspected nothing and happily joined the 72 other guests at his brother's palace. It was indeed a truly delicious banquet, with great heaps of food served off solid gold plates, and the finest wines flowing from solid gold jugs. At the end of the meal, Set clapped his hands, and 4 servants entered, carrying with them an ornate chest, lined with silver and gold, and studded with jewels. Calling for silence, Set got to his feet. "I thought I would end this feast," he said, "with a little competition. I'm sure my dear brother, whose goodness cannot be praised quite enough, will join in. The chest is both the challenge and the prize. I will give it to whomsoever can fit inside it. If you can fit inside the chest, then it is yours." Osiris smiled when he heard this. He had noticed from the very start that all of Set's friends were rather on the fat side, although he had been far too polite to mention it. What he didn't know was that Set had chosen them for that very reason. Now, he watched as one after another they tried to squeeze into the box, and joined in the laughter as the task proved impossible. At last, he stood up himself. "My dear brother," he announced, "I rather fancy that I have more chance than anyone of winning your precious box. Let me try." He walked down to the chest, got in without difficulty, and lay on his back. "There you are," he began. And at that very moment, all 72 guests leapt onto the chest, slammed down the lid, locked it, wrapped it up in ropes and chains, and nailed it shut. Then they carried it out of the palace, and ignoring the muffled cries of protest from inside, hurled it into the Nile. The coffin, for that was what the chest had now become, was carried out to the sea by the Nile. At last, it was washed up on the Phoenician coast and came to rest under a tamarisk tree. The tree reached out with its branches and embraced the chest, pulling it into its trunk. And that is where it remained for many, many years. Eventually, the tamarisk tree was cut down by a local king, who it was said needed a pillar to support the roof of his palace. But when the tree was set in place, it was discovered that it gave off a marvelous scent. People could smell the tree for miles around, a smell of summer, of honey, and of fresh blossoms. So remarkable was the phenomenon that news of it spread first across the country and eventually all the way to Isis in Egypt. Now, because of her knowledge of magic, she guessed that the tree must contain the body of Osiris, and so it is said that she slipped away at once to retrieve it. After the death of her husband and brother, Isis had torn her clothes and cut her hair in mourning as custom dictated. For a long, long time, she had searched for his body, but without success. And meanwhile, Set had seized the throne of Egypt, ruling with cruelty where Osiris had shown only kindness, enslaving the people and once again encouraging cannibal feasts. Now, Isis wasted no time in cutting open the pillar and removing the chest. Once it was in her possession, she carried it all the way back to Egypt. and she hid it on the floating island of Chemis in the middle of the Nile. There she remained, bathing the chest in tears, while she prepared the necessary funeral rites. But her misfortunes were far from over, for it happened that Set, who loved to go hunting at night, chanced to come to the island of Chemis, and to his great surprise, stumbled upon the chest. "What is this?" he exclaimed. "My dear brother seems to love me so much that he has returned to plague me. Well, this time I must get rid of him once and for all." And so saying, he opened up the casket, drew his sword, and cut the body into 14 pieces. Then he scattered the pieces across the land of Egypt and went back to the palace to sleep. Now, Isis had seen what had happened, and the next 2 years of her life were spent searching for the 14 pieces of Osiris. It was, as you can imagine, a very strange business. One day, in the middle of a clump of bulrushes, she might discover an arm and a part of an elbow. Then, several months later, in a grove of palm trees, she would come across a foot or a knee. It was a complicated jigsaw puzzle. But at last, the time came when she had found 13 pieces of Osiris. The 14th had been eaten by a crab. Using all her powers of magic, Isis joined the 13 pieces together again, so that the body was whole. The process that she discovered that day was called embalming, and afterwards all the great pharaohs and the wealthiest noblemen were embalmed in exactly the same way, which is why there have been always so many mummies in Egypt. When Isis finished her work, Osiris woke up, as if from a deep sleep, and he embraced her. He could now have chosen to stay in Egypt in order to punish Set and regain the throne. But having been smothered in a chest, drowned in the Nile, swallowed up by a tree and finally cut into 14 pieces. He was too tired and decided instead to descend to the Egyptian underworld. And so it was that it was left to Horus, the son of Osiris, to avenge his father's death. He and Set fought many battles, with Set becoming stronger and crueler as every day passed. But finally, Horus took a sharp harpoon and plunged it into Set's brain. And that was the end of him. Horus became Pharaoh of Egypt, the last god to rule in human form. And Osiris remained with Isis in the underworld, where he ruled over the dead as kindly and as wisely as he had once ruled over the living. In the very beginning, before there was a beginning, it is said there existed only noon, an endless expanse of dark, still waters. This was no place for spaceships or explorers, but rather an infinite ocean of nothingness, stretching in all directions. Here, there was no separation of earth and sky, no names for anything, no concept of life or death. Noon had always been and always would be eternal, motionless, silent. To wrap their minds around this incomprehensible vastness, the ancient Egyptians personified different aspects of noon as 4 pairs of gods and goddesses. The males took the form of frogs, while the females appeared as snakes. There was Noon and Naunet, embodying the limitless waters themselves. Ha and Howhet represented infinity. Cook and Cowcat were the essence of darkness. And Amun and Amunet symbolized all that was hidden. Together, these 8 primordial deities were known as the Ogdoad. Now, the clever priests of Hermopolis had their own ideas about how creation unfolded from this watery chaos. They said the 8 gods of the Ogdoad worked together form the first mound of earth, a tiny island in the endless sea. Upon this mound, they created an egg from which the sun god would hatch. But as with all good myths, there were many variations. Some said it was the great honker, a celestial goose, who laid the egg of the sun. Others claimed it was Thoth, in the form of an ibis. Still, other tales spoke of a lotus flower blooming in noon, from which the sun emerged, first as Kepri the scarab beetle, then as the child god, Nefertum, whose opening eyes brought light to the world. Of all the members of the Ogdoad, Noon himself had special significance. Though often shown as a frog, like his male counterparts, he could also appear as a man with an elaborate wig, or as a figure of abundance and fertility. For, you see, despite being a realm of darkness and formlessness, Noon contained within him the seeds of all creation. This might seem odd at first. How could a place of such emptiness be the source of life? But the Egyptians, ever the optimists, saw endless potential in Noon's chaotic waters. Just as light springs from darkness, and verdant fields emerge from floods, so too could order arise from disorder. Within Noon's infinite expanse lay the possibility of all things. And so it was, from the depths of Noon, that creation would begin. In the infinite darkness of Noon, there existed a god named Amun. Though he began as just one of 8 primordial deities, by 1200 BC, Amun had risen to unparalleled importance in Egyptian religion. The priests now claimed that even the Ogdoad of Hermopolis was merely the first expression of Amun's hidden power. The Egyptians depicted Amun as a blue-skinned man wearing a crown of tall feathers. They called him the Great Honker, linking him to the goose whose cry broke the silence at the dawn of time. Sometimes he appeared as a ram, symbolizing his fertile nature. though often paired with the goddess Mut. Amun's primordial counterpart was Amunet, shown wearing the crown of Lower Egypt. Amun represented all that was hidden and unknowable. He existed both within and beyond noon, transcendent and invisible. Even, it was said, the other gods did not truly understand his nature. As one hymn declared, "No god truly knows his appearance. No image of him is unfolded through inscriptions. No one testifies to him accurately." Indeed, it was said that anyone who learned Amun's secret identity would instantly drop dead. Yet, from within this ultimate mystery, Amun decided to create the world. As the hymn tells us, he began speaking in the midst of silence. He began crying out while the world was in stillness, his yell in circulation, while he had no second, that he might give birth to what is and cause them to live. But Amun's act of creation required the aid of another god, Ptah, the divine craftsman. Where Amun provided the vision, Ptah supplied the creative force to make it real. The priests imagined Ptah as a mummy-wrapped figure, gripping a scepter. The power of the creative mind personified. All things, they said, were a creation of his heart, conceived in thought and spoken into existence. Ptah was worshipped primarily at Memphis, near modern Cairo. He formed a family triad with the lion goddess Sekhmet and their son Nefertum, depicted as a child with a lotus flower on his head. Later, Ptah merged with Tatenan, the god of the risen land, becoming Ptah Tatenan. Together, Amun's vision and Ptah's craft set the physical evolution of the world in motion. Their power stirred to life an egg floating in the dark waters of noon. This egg contained Atum, the seed of all creation. Atum, whose name means the finisher, was the Lord of totality. It is said he could take many forms: a mongoose, scarab beetle, lizard, snake, baboon, or the Bennu bird. As the evening form of the sun god, he was shown with a ram's head. At first, Atum was alone and inert in the primeval ocean. But slowly he began to stir. His son, Shu, representing life itself, awakened Atum's consciousness. His daughter, Ma'at, embodying order and truth, became the breath that fully roused him. Now aware, Atum separated himself from the infinite waters. He became the remainder, the first solid matter in the universe. In some tales, this took the form of a mound rising from the sea, perhaps inspiring the later shape of the pyramids. Atum then began to evolve, taking form as he desired. As one spell proclaimed, "It was through my effectiveness that I brought about my body. I am the one who made me. It was as I wished, according to my heart, that I built myself." And so, the created world took shape, born from the hidden power of Amun, crafted by the skill of Ptah, and embodied in the self-creating form of Atum. The gods had awakened, and creation had begun. This version of events, blending the theologies of Thebes, Memphis, and Heliopolis, shows how the Egyptians harmonized their various creation myths into a complex and interconnected cosmogony, with each god playing a crucial role in the birth of the universe. Now, as our tale unfolds, we come to the birth of Shu and Tefnut, the first generation of gods to spring from Amun's divine form. How they came to be, you ask? Well, that depends on which version of the story you prefer. Some say Atum sneezed them out. Others claim he spat them forth. And still, others insist they were the product of a rather private act of self-pleasure. Whatever the case, these divine twins found themselves ejected from their father's body, yet still trapped within the confines of his expanding form, like two peas in a cosmic pod, if you will. But here's the rub. The Despite their newfound independence, Shu and Tefnut were still tethered to their creator, lacking the vital spark to truly stand on their own 4 feet, or paws, as the case may be. Atum, ever the doting parent, decided to remedy this sorry state of affairs. Just as his children had once given him the power to break free from Noon's watery embrace, Atum now returned the favor. He gathered Shu and Tefnut in his arms and passed on his Ka, his very life force, granting them the freedom to roam and exist as they pleased. Now, Tefnut was a curious sort. Sometimes she'd show up as a woman, but more often than not, she preferred to strut about as a lioness with a human body. Quite the fashion statement, I must say. Her exact role in the grand scheme of things was a bit of a head-scratcher for the ancient Egyptians. Some clever chaps called her moisture, or corrosive moist air, while others reckoned she marked the upper limit of the duat. That's the afterlife realm, in case you were wondering. But one thing was certain. She was destined to be the mother of all future gods. Shu, on the other hand, was a simpler fellow to pin down. Picture a man with a jaunty feather perched atop his head. That was Shu, though he too could don a lion's mane when the mood struck him. But his real claim to fame was his day job as the atmosphere itself. In cosmic illustrations, you'd find him standing tall, arms stretched high, keeping the sky and earth apart like some divine acrobat. Shu was the very air we breathe, the empty space that gives us room to move about and live our lives. But the birth of Shu and Tefnut didn't just create space. It brought time itself into being. Shu, you see, represented Nehe, the Egyptian notion of cyclical time. Think of the sun rising and setting, the annual floods of the Nile, the endless dance of life and death, growth and decay. Tefnut, not to be outdone, embodied Jet, time standing still, everything that lasts and endures, like mummies or great stone monuments. And so, with physical space and the concept of time now firmly established, the stage was set for the grandest spectacle of all, the first sunrise and the dawn of humankind. Now, Shu and Tefnut, those divine twins, found themselves cradled in the waters of noon, a place of endless possibility and rebirth. But Atom, ever the watchful father, wasn't about to let his children wander off without supervision. So, he sent forth his sole eye to keep tabs on the youngsters. This Eye of Atom, or Eye of Ra, as it's often called, was quite the character in Egyptian mythology. Sometimes it was the sun, sometimes it was the moon, and on special occasions it even played the part of the morning star. But here's the kicker. This eye had a mind of its own. It could pop off Atom's face and gallivant about as a goddess. Maybe Hathor one day, Bastet the next, or Mut if it was feeling particularly matronly. By dispatching his sole eye on this cosmic babysitting mission, Atom inadvertently set the stage for the first sunrise. Of course, this celestial light show wouldn't have been possible without Shu's handiwork in creating a void. As Shu boasted himself, I made light of the darkness, and it is I who made the sky light after darkness. And so, Atom began his daily journey across the heavens, a grand spectacle that would repeat for eternity. But what of mankind, you ask? Well, that's where things get a bit messy. You see, when the eye returned from its babysitting gig, it was none too pleased to find it had been replaced by a shiny new peeper called the Glorious One. In a fit, the original eye burst into tears, and wouldn't you know it, those very tears became humanity. To calm the eye down, Atom plunked it on his forehead, where it exercised governance over the entire land as a fire-spitting cobra. Talk about failing upwards. Now, there are other versions of how we humans came to be. Some say we sprung from the blindness that is behind the God, while others say we emerged from Atom's eye itself. There's even a tale of the sun god weeping in loneliness, his own tears becoming mankind. The gods, on the other hand, were born from the Creator's smile or sweat. And before you wrinkle your nose, remember that a god's sweat was said to smell of incense. Despite our rather accidental origins, the Creator did throw humanity a few bones. He whipped up the four winds to give us the breath of life, ensured the Nile would flood annually to keep our bellies full, made everyone equal, except the king. Naturally, he was quite special, and gave us all a hankering for the afterlife. In fact, the Creator grew quite fond of his accidental creations. As one ancient text puts it, "For it is for their sake that he created heaven and earth. He stilled the raging of the waters, and created the winds so that their nostrils might live. They are his images who come forth from his body, and it is for their sake that he rises in the sky." And it wasn't just humans that the gods looked after. Amun, the overachiever, made sure there was pasture for animals, rivers for fish, and air for birds. He even looked out for the little ones: mosquitoes, worms, fleas, mice, and beetles. He was a regular divine zookeeper. And so, with the cosmos in order, the sun on its daily journey, and all manner of creatures, great and small, scurrying about, the stage was set for the great drama of Egyptian mythology to unfold. Now, let me tell you about the most fearsome creature that slithered its way into existence from the very moment of creation. Apophis, a monstrous snake some 120 cubits long. That's about 63 meters. Each night, without fail, this scaly terror would attack the sun god Ra as he sailed across the sky in his solar boat. Apophis was a nasty piece of work. They called him the Roarer, and though he lacked nose, ears, and eyes, he still managed to possess the evil eye. With just a glance, he could paralyze gods and men alike. No wonder the pharaohs took to whacking a symbolic eye of Apophis with a bat in their rituals. Better safe than sorry, I always say. Now, you might wonder where this serpentine menace came from. Truth be told, his origins are a bit murky. There's one late tale that says he sprang from the discarded spittle of Neith. But for most of Egyptian history, Apophis just was. As if he'd always existed, lurking in the shadows of pre-creation. But let's not dwell on such unpleasantness. Instead, let's turn our attention to the next generation of gods. Shu and Tefnut, those divine twins we met earlier, they went on and had themselves 2 children, Geb and Nut. Now Nut, bless her, took on the job of being the sky vault. Picture, if you will, a transparent barrier keeping those pesky primordial waters of noon from crashing down on our heads. When the Egyptians showed Nut in their art, they often portrayed her as a naked woman, holding herself up by her arms and legs. Sometimes she'd stretch from one end of the earth to the other, and other times she'd hold herself in close, creating a narrow path for the sun, moon, and stars to travel along. Occasionally, she'd even stare right out at you from the artwork, as if you were gazing up at the sky itself. Geb, on the other hand, became the earth itself. The Egyptians usually showed him as a fellow with green skin, often decorated with plants. He'd be lying on his side, casual as you please, leaning on one elbow. When he did stand up, he'd sport the red crown of Lower Egypt, or sometimes a goose on his head. Now, these 2 lovebirds had a bit of trouble at first. One story says they were embracing so tightly that poor Nut couldn't give birth. Shu had to pry them apart just so their children could be born. Another tale says Ra cursed Nut so she couldn't give birth on any of the 360 days of the year. But clever Thoth won 5 extra days from the moon in a game of drafts, and on those 5 days Nut gave birth to her children. Speaking of children, let me introduce you to the offspring of Nut and Geb, born in this order: Osiris, Horus the Elder, though she's often left out of non-Greek accounts; Set, who was in such a rush he burst light through his mother's side; Isis, and Nephis. Together with their parents and grandparents, they form Egypt's traditional Great Ennead, the group of 9 gods who represented the physical creation of the world. And there you have it. From Amun's first yell in the silence of this divine family tree, creation was complete. As the priests of Amun might say, the Ennead is combined in your body. Your image is every god joined in your person. You emerged first. You began from the start. You see, every faucet of the universe is just a manifestation of Amun's hidden force. He's the original one who begot the original ones and caused the sun to be born, completing himself in atom, one body within him. All these gods, with their independent personalities and powers, are really just different aspects of the great Amun, all interlocking and unified in our little bubble of creation. Quite the family drama, wouldn't you say? But then again, what's a good creation myth without a bit of cosmic intrigue? And let's not forget, this grand tale of creation didn't just explain how the world came to be. It also set the stage for all the myths and legends yet to come. The battle between order and chaos, the cycle of life and death, the journey of the sun. And all these themes would play out again and again in the rich tapestry of Egyptian mythology. You sit on the warm stone steps near the river's edge, carefully rolling your papyrus scroll as the evening sun turns the Nile into liquid gold. As an apprentice scribe, these quiet moments by the water have become your favorite time to practice. Your most treasured possession, a perfect white feather pen given to you by your mentor on the day you began your training, rests gently in your hand. Still studying, my friend? The familiar voice belongs to Amenhat, the boat owner's son. His smile is bright as he secures his father's trading vessel to the dock. You've known each other since childhood, and he always lets you use their boat as a peaceful place to practice your writing. Father says you're welcome to stay aboard while we wait for the last deliveries from upriver. You nod gratefully, gathering your scrolls and inkpot. The boat rocks gently as you step aboard, finding your usual spot among the carefully stacked trade goods. Rolls of linen, jars of honey, and bundles of dried herbs that fill the air with sweet scents. From here, you can see the whole river, busy with the last boats of the day heading home. And that's when you notice it. A white ibis, standing perfectly still on a nearby reed bank, its feathers glowing in the evening light. And something about its presence catches your breath. These birds are sacred to Thoth, the god of scribes. And this one seems to be watching you with unusual interest. Its feathers look just like your precious pen. As you lean forward to get a better look, a warm breeze sweeps across the deck. Before you catch it, your white feather pen slips from your fingers, dancing on the wind. Your heart jumps, but instead of falling into the river, the feather floats up, drifting toward the western bank. The ibis spreads its wings and gracefully takes flight, following the same path as your feather. Amenhat, you call, trying to keep your voice calm despite your worry. Can we follow it? He finishes your thought with a knowing smile, already untying the boat. Father's last delivery can wait a while longer. Besides, he adds, looking at the ibis now gliding ahead of your feather. When the god's bird calls, only a fool would ignore it. The boat pulls away from the dock with a gentle sway, and so begins your evening journey, following a sacred bird and a treasured feather into the gathering dusk of ancient Egypt. As Amenhat guides the boat into the river's gentle current, you watch the white ibis gliding ahead, your feather floating just beneath its path. The great bird seems to pause occasionally, as if making sure you're following. The last rays of sunlight catch its wings, making them shine like polished limestone. You know, Amenhat says quietly, my grandfather used to say the ibis are really scribes who lived thousands of years ago, still watching over their students. He grins at your raised eyebrow. He had a story for everything on the river. That's what happens when you spend 60 years as a boat master. The familiar sounds of river life surround you as you drift downstream. A group of women laugh softly as they fill their clay water jugs at the river's edge. their voices carrying across the water. They wave as you pass. You recognize them from the market, where you sometimes help your mentor record grain scales. Two young boys herd their goats along the bank, their quiet whistles mixing with the gentle splash of water against the boat's hull. Look there. Amenhat points to a fishing boat, pulling in its nets for the day. Old Kennemun's had a good catch. The fishermen work in rhythm, their movements practiced and peaceful, their nets heavy with silver fish. You've written their receipts many times in your practice sessions, carefully noting the weight and type of each fish. The boat drifts past a cluster of papyrus reeds, their tall stems swaying like dancers in the evening breeze. You remember learning to write hieroglyph for papyrus, how your mentor showed you that its shape mirrors these very plants. Everything a scribe writes, he told you, connects to the world around us. Now, watching the stems bend and straighten, you understand his words in a new way. Ahead, your white feather catches another breeze, lifting higher before settling back on its path. The ibis wheels once overhead, its long beak pointing toward the western bank, where the great pyramids rise against the darkening sky. Their massive shapes seem to glow with the day's stored sunlight. My brother Nacht works there, Amenhat says proudly, steering the boat slightly to follow the ibis's path. He's part of the team laying the outer casing stones. Says it's like fitting stars into the sky. Each one has to be perfect. He pauses, reading your expression. Would you like to see? He's probably finishing his shift soon. Other boats pass by, heading home for the evening. You recognize many of the faces, merchants whose inventories you've recorded, craftsmen whose work orders you've practiced writing. They call gentle greetings across the water. Hey, young scribe, following Thoth's bird, an old pearl dealer shouts with a knowing smile. May he guide your reed pen true. The air grows cooler as dusk deepens, carrying the scent of cooking fires from the villages along the bank. Women in doorways light oil lamps that flicker like earthbound stars, somewhere, a shepherd plays a reed flute, its notes drifting across the water like scattered flower petals. You dip your hand in the river, feeling its coolness against your skin. How many stories has this ancient water carried? How many scribes before you have watched the sun set from a boat like this, their own precious writing tools close at hand? The thought fills you with a peaceful sense of connection to all those who've come before. The ibis banks gracefully toward the western shore, where you can see the torches being lit at the base of the pyramids. Your feather follows, caught in the same invisible current that guides the sacred bird. Amenhotep begins to turn the boat, his movements as smooth as the river itself. "It seems," he says softly, "that your feather is leading us to the house that the two lands are building for their king." He uses the formal phrase you've written so many times in your practice texts, and somehow it makes this moment feel even more significant. The boat glides on through the gathering darkness, moving from the busy world of the river toward the eternal silence of the pyramids, following a white bird and a floating feather into what feels increasingly like a dream. The western horizon has become a painter's palette of deep oranges and purples as Amenhotep guides the boat toward the workers' harbor. Here, smaller docks reach out into the river like wooden fingers, built to receive the limestone blocks that arrive daily from the quarries upstream. The ibis circles once, your white feather dancing in its wake, before gliding toward the torchlit path that leads up to the construction site. "There's Noct now," Amenhotep says, pointing to a tall figure carrying a measure rope. His brother stands with a group of workers at the harbor's edge, their shadows long in the late evening light. Like most craftsmen finishing their day's work, Noct's cloth kilt bears the white dust of limestone, marking him as one of the skilled builders of the Great Pyramid. As the boat draws closer to the dock, you can't help but stare up at the massive structure that's been growing steadily higher with each passing season. You've been copying texts about its construction since you began your training, precise measurements, worker rotations, delivery schedules. But seeing it now, bathed in the last light of day, takes your breath away. The smooth white casing stones at its base, catching the dying sunlight like pieces of fallen sky. The night crew is preparing to take over. Nacht calls as he helps secure the boat. His hands are rough from working with stone, but his movements are gentle with the mooring rope. You've chosen a beautiful evening to visit, young scribe. He glances at your scroll with knowing eyes. Though, shouldn't you be heading to your evening lessons? You explain about the feather and the ibis as workers stream past on their way home, carrying their tools, sharing quiet conversations about the day's progress. Some nod respectfully when they see your scroll case. Scribes are well regarded here, where every stone must be perfectly recorded and accounted for. The ibis has landed near the base of the worker's path, waiting with what seems like infinite patience. Your white feather rests nearby on a strand of dry grass, gently moving in the evening breeze, but making no attempt to fly further. The sacred bird turns and looks at you, its eyes reflecting the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. Look there, Nacht says softly, pointing to where the pyramid's peak seems to touch the emerging stars. Tonight, we'll set more stones by starlight, aligning them with the eternal ones above. He smiles at your obvious fascination. Would you like to see our work up close? The night brings a different kind of peace to the building site. The air has grown cooler now, carrying the scent of desert herbs and limestone dust. Cooking fires are being lit in the workers' village nearby, and you can hear the distant sound of children being called home for evening meals. A crew of torchbearers moves along the pyramid's base, bringing light to the paths where the night workers will soon continue the never-ending task of building eternity. Your mentor's words come back to you. A true scribe must observe everything. For how can we record what we haven't truly seen? Surely he would understand your delay, especially on such an unusual evening. The ibis takes flight again, moving slowly up the torchlit path, your feather lifted by the same breeze that carries the bird aloft. Amenhat secures the boat one final time. "Shall we follow?" he asks, although he already knows your answer. The pull of the sacred bird and the massive pyramid above is too strong to resist. You step onto the harbor's wooden planks, still warm from the day's sun, as Nacht leads you and Amenhat up the well-worn path. Workers finishing their day shift pass by, their faces tired but peaceful, each one carrying the tools of their trade: copper chisels, measuring ropes, smoothing stones. Some call greetings to Nacht, their voices carrying the easy friendship of people who work side by side beneath the hot sun. "Kenzu, tell your wife the honey cakes were perfect," Nacht calls to a passing stone setter. Turning to you, he explains. His wife trades them for medicine. I took some to my daughter yesterday. These small details of daily life seem to soften the mammoth scale of the construction above you. The ibis has landed again, perched atop a limestone block that waits to be lifted into place tomorrow. Your white feather rests at its feet, glowing softly in the deepening dusk. And against the darkening sky, you can see the massive ramps that wrap around the pyramid's sides like giant ribbons, their surfaces solid with crushed limestone and clay. Teams of night workers are beginning to gather, checking ropes and rollers, their quiet conversations mixing with the sound of torchwood crackling. You pass the scribe's station, a simple wooden shelter where during the day your fellow apprentices record every stone's placement, every worker's contribution, every measurement and alignment. Rolls of fresh papyrus wait for tomorrow's records. You often dream of working here, helping to document the building of eternity. "Good evening, young one," a voice calls. It's Imhotep, one of the master scribes you've seen speaking with your mentor. He's finishing his day's records his reed pen moving swift and sure across the papyrus. Following God's messenger, I see. He nods toward the ibis with a knowing smile. Sometimes the most important lessons come after the formal teachings end. The air grows cooler as you climb higher up the harbor path, carrying the scent of dinner fires from the workers' village. Women call to their children, clay pots clatter, and someone plays a flute. The familiar sounds of day settling into the night. Dogs bark in the distance, and somewhere a baby cries sleepily. These humble human sounds seem to belong here, even at the foot of such grandeur. Noct pauses at a wide spot in the path, letting a team of night workers pass with their torches. The ibis takes flight again, moving toward the pyramid's base, where massive casing stones gleam in the torchlight. Your feather follows, lifted by the same evening breeze that cools your warmed skin. The night crew begins their work soon, Noct says softly. They say the stars guide their hands as they fit stone to stone. He points to where the first evening star has appeared above the pyramid's peak. Shall we go see? The path ahead glows with torchlight, and the sacred bird seems to beckon you forward into the gathering night, toward mysteries that feel both ancient and new. You follow Noct between the massive limestone blocks that wait like sleeping giants in the darkness. The torchlight creates dancing shadows that make the stones seem alive, as if they're breathing in the cool evening air. Your white feather drifts ahead, following the ibis as it leads you deeper into the site. Watch your step here. Noct guides you around a series of wooden rollers. These will be used tonight to move the facing stones. He points up the enormous ramp, where teams of night workers are already taking their positions. Their torches form a line of moving stars against the darkened sky, and their quiet voices drift down like leaves on the evening breeze. The ibis lands on a massive wooden lever, the kind you've drawn countless times while copying engineering documents. In the flickering light, You can see the intricate systems of ropes and counterweights that will help lift the stones during the night shift. Your feather settles nearby, stirring gently with each breath of wind. Ah, young Nacht, a deep voice calls out. An older man approaches, his shaven head gleaming in the torchlight. You recognize him as Senimut, the master builder whose measurements you've been studying in your lessons. And what's this? A scribe's apprentice. He peers at your scroll case with interest. Come, you should see this. We're about to set a perfect stone. You follow Senimut to where a massive limestone block hangs suspended in an intricate cradle of ropes. Workers move around it with practiced grace, checking knots and alignments. One man runs his hands over the stone's surface, feeling for imperfections that might prevent it from fitting perfectly with its neighbors. You've written about this process dozens of times, but seeing it fills you with quiet awe. Look here. Senimut points to where copper guide pins gleam in the torchlight. These will help us place it exactly within the width of a hair. Stars above guide us, but these little pieces of copper keep us true. He speaks with the quiet pride of someone who has dedicated his life to perfection. The ibis watches from its perch as the workers begin their careful choreography. Ropes creak softly, sandaled feet shuffle on stone. Quiet commands pass from mouth to mouth. You notice how everyone moves with careful precision, each person knowing their exact role in this ancient dance of construction. Your mentor's voice echoes in your memory. Every great work is built of small, perfect moments. Nacht points to a group of men, consulting a measuring cord marked with knots. See how they check the angles. They'll work through the night by torchlight. But every stone must be as perfect as if Ra himself were watching. His voice carries the same pride you hear when he speaks of his daughter. A cool breeze carries the scent of desert sage. From this height, you can see the workers' village below, now dotted with cooking fires that mirror the stars above. The Nile gleams like a ribbon of silver in the distance, where more boats move like water birds in the gathering darkness. Somewhere below, Amenhat's father's boat rocks gently at its mooring, waiting to return you to your normal life. The ibis takes flight again, circling the construction site before landing near a small grove of palms. It grows improbably among the limestone chips and building debris. Your feather follows, drawn as if by an invisible thread. As you watch the sacred bird, Seminut speaks softly beside you. You know, young scribe, we builders have a saying: the stones know where they belong. Every block we raise has its perfect place, waiting since the beginning of time. He gestures to where your feather drifts toward the grove. Perhaps your feather knows its place too. The torchlight catches the white feather as it floats past, making it glow like a fallen star. The ibis stands perfectly still now, watching you with ancient eyes that seem to hold mysteries deeper than the foundation stones beneath your feet. Around you, the night crew continues their work. The subtle sounds of construction mixing with the evening prayers now rising from the village below. Shall we see where it leads? Nacht asks, already moving toward the grove. Even in the deepening night, the path seems to glow with its own soft light, as if the sacred bird's presence makes everything a little more luminous. The palm grove appears like an oasis of stillness within the bustling construction site. Here, the sounds of building seem to fade, replaced by the gentle rustling of palm fronds in the evening breeze. The ibis stands in a patch of moonlight that somehow finds its way through the leaves. And there, resting perfectly at its feet, is your white feather. But it's not alone. Scattered around the sacred bird, as if arranged by invisible hands, lies a collection of perfect white feathers. Each one catches the combined glow of torchlight and stars, creating a circle of soft radiance on the ground. Your original feather rests at the center, indistinguishable from its companions, except for the familiar way it speaks to your heart. I've worked here for 15 years, Nacht whispers, but I've never seen anything like this. He stays at the edge of the grove, as if understanding this moment belongs to you alone. You step forward slowly, feeling the sacred weight of the moment. The ibis watches you with infinite patience, its dark eyes reflecting pinpoints of starlight. In all your studies of holy texts, you've read how Thoth, the god of scribes, takes the form of an ibis to guide those who seek wisdom. Now, standing in this impossible grove amid the world's greatest construction, those ancient words feel more real than the stone beneath your feet. As you kneel to gather the feathers, each one perfect for a scribe's work, the ibis makes a soft sound, not quite a call, more like a whisper in a language just beyond understanding. The evening breeze carries the scent of sacred lotus flowers, though none grow nearby. You carefully wrap the feathers in a corner of your linen shirt, handling them with the same reverence you show to fresh papyrus scrolls. Your original feather you hold up to the starlight. Perhaps it's your imagination, but it seems to glow a little brighter now, as if blessed by its journey. The ibis bows its head once, a gesture so human-like that your breath catches. Then, with a silence that feels like a prayer, it spreads its wings and takes flight. You watch as it circles once above the grove, its white feathers luminous against the dark sky. It wheels around the peak of the Great Pyramid, growing smaller and smaller, until it becomes one with the stars themselves. The breeze that carried your feather on its journey stills, as if its work is complete. Standing in the sacred grove, cradling your collection of divine gifts, you understand that some lessons can't be copied onto papyrus. Some must be written directly onto the heart. You walk back down the winding path with Nacht and Amanat, your precious bundle of feathers secure against your chest. The Great Pyramid rises behind you, its white limestone casing catching starlight and torch glow, while ahead, the Nile flows like liquid silver under the rising moon. The night crew's work has begun in earnest now. Their rhythmic movements, creating a gentle symphony of stone and rope that echoes across the plateau. My father will have finished his deliveries, Amenhat says softly as you reach the harbor. We should return you to your studies. But his voice carries understanding of what you've witnessed, knowing some moments are worth more than all the lessons in the scribe's library. The familiar rocking of the boat welcomes you back as you settle among the trading goods. Their scents, honey, herbs, and linen, mix with the limestone dust still clinging to your clothes, creating a perfume unique to this magical evening. Nacht waves from the dock as Amenhat guides the boat back into the river's current. As you drift downstream, the sounds of construction fade into the river's gentle song. The night has fully claimed the sky now. The stars wheel overhead in their eternal dance. You hold one of your new feathers up against the starlight, seeing how it catches the moon's glow, just as the ibis's wings had done. Your eyelids grow heavy as the boat rocks beneath you. Tomorrow, you'll return to your lessons, but you'll bring with you more than just new writing implements. You'll carry the memory of this sacred evening, of following a divine messenger, of standing among the builders of eternity. The gentle splash of water against the hull becomes a lullaby. Through half-closed eyes, you watch the last torches of the construction site shimmer like earthbound stars. A night bird calls somewhere along the bank. Not an ibis, but perhaps another of God's messengers, bidding you good night. The boat rocks, the river flows, the stars wheel overhead. Their precious feathers rest safely in their wrapping. As your thoughts drift like lotus petals on the current, here, cradled by the ancient river, beneath the eternal stars, watched over by the Great Pyramid, growing slowly toward heaven, you feel yourself floating gently into dreams, carried on white wings into peaceful darkness.